Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Paul Myers, licensed professional counselor, owner and lead therapist of Intentional Counseling, and a co-owner of Veiled Free as well. Hey, today we are going to talk about having a judgmental spirit or a judgmental way of thinking. We're going to talk about antidotes to that judgment, and regardless of whether you're on one side of the spectrum or the other, meaning, you know, the victim of being judged or the person doing the judging, regardless of what spectrum you're on, I find this to be a really relevant topic, really common, and I think you'll find it to be helpful. See it a lot in my practice. So I wrote 8 really healthy points of things that you can tell yourself to either combat being judged and debunk being judged, and also if you struggle with being judgmental towards others, how to work on that and to make progress in that area. Okay, so here we go. Let's dive in. We got antidotes for judgmental thinking, healthy acceptance of human nature. So what I mean by that, we have to acknowledge that human nature is not perfect, right? I think we can all acknowledge that. There's no shortage of evidence of that. And that's okay, right? So I have a rule, 20% room for error is my rule. It's a great philosophy that all people are human and they make mistakes and there's room for error and we mess up and we're not perfect. And so that's human nature, is not imperfect, okay? So this is a very healthy mindset, very normal, very realistic, and very much needed if you're gonna curb being judgmental. A lot of time being judgmental is holding people to a high standard or an expectation of some kind, or being critical, or a high moral standard, or some kind of personal conviction you have, or rules, right? And so acknowledging human nature helps debunk some of those rules, okay? So that's number 1. Hey, 20% room for error, no one's perfect. Okay. Number 2 is acknowledging your own personal weak points, okay? We all have flaws and weaknesses. We all have limitations. We all have to chew our food and sleep 8 hours a day. We all are bound by time and limited by our bodies and our flesh. And we have limitations and we have weaknesses. Everyone has a vice. Whether it's, yours is depression, theirs is anxiety, pride, addiction, whatever, right? It doesn't matter what your issue is. Everyone's got something. Okay? And the people who said they don't are lying to themselves. Okay? They're in denial. So that's a separate video. So back to acknowledging your own personal weak points. Okay? When you focus on your flaws and weaknesses, it's really hard to judge others, right? Also, if other people want to judge you, that's not their responsibility to manage. You are your responsibility to manage. So, focus on your weak points and what you need to be working on. Okay? Awesome. Number 3, realistic expectations of self and others. Okay? So, like I said earlier, no one's perfect. We all have limitations. Okay? When we talk about realistic expectations, we're not holding ourselves to this high standard of perfection, or never mess up, or never make a mistake, or always be on point. That's kind of perfectionism philosophy, perfectionism thinking, which is not healthy. It produces anxiety. Okay, so realistic expectations help us manage our day-to-day stress, and we don't get so wrapped up in it, and it helps us cope with that, have resilience to some disappointments, some setbacks, to flaws that we have, and how those come to fruition and manifest, okay? So that's a good thing. And also of others too, then they're not constantly frustrating you and disappointing you. A lot of the time when you expect more, you're more unhappy and you're more frustrated and you're more miserable and you're not joyful, right? Because of all these expectations. So some expectations are okay, but notice I said realistic expectations, not no expectations, right? Okay, or negative expectations only, which would be cynicism, which is pessimistic and negative, which again produces depression and anger. Okay, so we want realistic expectations. Okay, We're acknowledging those limitations and flaws in ourselves. We're acknowledging those limitations and flaws in others. They're just as human as you. No one's exempt. Okay? Excellent. Number 4, perception is reality. Okay? What people perceive, what people experience, that's their reality, right? The 13-year-old girl, I love this parallel here. The 13-year-old girl who loses her phone, her new iPhone in the lake, and to her it's the end of the world, and she's so depressed, and goes really down with her thought life, and really struggles, and it's real clinical depression, like it's real depression for her. Okay, that's just the same depression to her brain as something more severe, like someone who lost a loved one, that's really, really crushing, or the fact that they're starving people in third world countries. Their struggles are difficult on them, right? So, however, to the brain, perception's reality, right? So if that's all I've ever experienced, that's all I ever know, what difference does it make? It doesn't, just because there are starving children in Africa doesn't make a $35,000 pay cut less painful for certain people in America, even though we have a lot more, right? So it's not to downplay or minimize things, but you really want to acknowledge perception's reality. It's not what happens to people, it's how you experience it, okay? So we just want to have a healthy acknowledgement of that, a healthy respect for perception being reality for people, okay? Now, that doesn't mean that all the facts are the same, but to that individual, that's their perception. So we just have to acknowledge that, right? Doesn't mean it's fully accurate or in line with your perception. That's their perception, okay? Everyone's different. Number 5. Factoring in all variables of influence. I see a lot of people jump to conclusions and assumptions without gathering all the information that there is to gather about a circumstance, a person, or whatever, right? Or themselves, okay? So, factoring in all variables is just good science, honestly. We're getting more data points. We're getting more collection of data. We're acknowledging those variables, right? Good science is about isolating variables, not throwing in more, right? So we want to factor in those variables and take those in consideration whenever you're making conclusions and assumptions about yourself or about others. Have you really considered all variables? Very few people do, right? Someone cuts you off on the road and you're driving and you get mad, you start judging that person. We haven't factored in all the variables, right? Maybe they're on their way to the hospital. Maybe they got fired that day. Maybe they're on their phone and not paying attention. We're not factoring in variables because we don't have all the information. We don't have all the variables. So it's really a waste to assume and conclude. It's unhealthy. Number 6, focus on what you can control, which is just yourself only. That's it. That's all you can control is you. So if you control you really well, focus on you really well, manage you well, don't worry about what other people are doing and not doing. You can't control that. Or what other people are thinking and not thinking. You can't control that, and nor is that your responsibility to manage. However, you are your own responsibility. So that helps with that judgmental spirit. It also helps if people are judging you, you can kind of, I'm just going to focus on me. I'm not accountable to them. I'm accountable to me, and I'm accountable to God. I'm not accountable to them. So it kind of helps you shrug it off a little bit. So, all right. 7 is avoiding projections of self. Projections when you take something of you and you put it on somebody else. For example, that road rage example I gave. I expect myself to drive responsibly. Projections when now you expect everyone else to also drive responsibly as well, right? So because I do it, I expect everyone else to do it as well. Or because I'm a liar, I expect everyone else to be a liar. Or because, whatever. I'm untrustworthy, I expect other people to be untrustworthy. Those would be examples of projections, okay? So we all have projections to some degree. It's very natural. Just be aware of that, We want to avoid that because that is not ever realistic or healthy to project. That is a reflection of you, not of others, okay? The last one is practice empathy and reversing roles with others. So empathy is understanding other people's feelings and feeling those feelings with them. Sympathy is like an intellectual understanding. Empathy is you're actually feeling what other people are feeling, okay? And reversing roles with somebody, putting yourself in their shoes, kind of helps you empathize with them a little bit. Like, if I were in their position, how would I feel? Very healthy thing to practice to improve your emotional intelligence, as well as curing this judgmental spirit or shaking off the fact that others are judgmental as well. Okay? That is all I had for you. These are great. Hopefully that helps you guys, whether you've been on one end of the spectrum or the other. It's super relevant. I find, all of us are going to relate at least to some of these, one or few of these, guaranteed. Okay? If you have any comments, leave those below. We'd love to engage with you. If you don't have a therapist, we'd be more than happy to help you. Therapy is very non-judgmental. That's the goal of therapy, is a non-judgmental space, to be honest and open, right? And not get judged, right? Most people are afraid of that. That's a normal fear, okay? But truly, at the end of the day, being judgmental is a reflection of the person doing the judging, right? We want to not be judgmental, nor do we want to take others' judgment and internalize that for ourselves, okay? Hey, if you have any questions, leave that below. Go to intentional-counseling.com if you need a therapist. We'd be more than happy to help you, or another qualified individual will be happy to help you. And until I see you next time, thanks for watching. Take care.